his research shows man has just 10 years to begin to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or global warming will reach what he calls a tipping point and will become unstoppable. He says the White House is blocking that message.
In my more than 3 decades in the government, I've never witnessed such restrictions on the ability of scientists to communicate with the public.
Restrictions like this email, which Hanson's Institute received from NASA in 2004. There is a new review process. The White House is now reviewing all climate-related press releases. Why the scrutiny of Hanson's work? Well, his Goddard Institute for Space Studies is the source of respected but sobering research on warming. For example, they found that 2005 was the warmest year on record. Hanson started at NASA more than 30 years ago and spent nearly all of that time studying the Earth. How important is his work? We asked someone at the top, Ralph Cicerone, president of the nation's leading institute of science, the National Academy of Sciences.
I can't think of anybody who I would say is better than Hanson. You might argue that there's 2 or 3 others as good, but nobody better.
And Cicerone, who's an atmospheric chemist, said the same thing that every leading scientist told us.
Climate change is really happening.
So what is causing the changes?
Well, the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane and chlorofluorocarbons and a couple of others, which are all the increases in their concentrations in the air are due to human activities. It's that simple.
But if it is that simple, why do climate science reports look like this after they've been edited at the White House, with science labeled not sufficiently reliable? It's a tone of scientific uncertainty that the president set in his first months in office after he pulled out of a global treaty to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
We do not know how much our climate could or will change in the future. We do not know how fast change will occur, or even how some of our actions could impact it.
That ambiguity annoyed Hanson, so he went public, saying this about the Bush administration in a talk at the University of Iowa.
I find a willingness to listen only to those portions of scientific results that fit predetermined, inflexible positions. This, I believe, is a recipe for environmental disasters.
Ever since he said that, NASA's been keeping an eye on Hanson. NASA let us sit down with him, but only with a NASA representative taping the interview. Other interviews have been denied.
And I object to the fact that I'm not able to freely communicate via the media. National Public Radio wanted to interview me, and they were told that they would need to instead interview someone at NASA headquarters, and the comment was made that they didn't want Jim Hanson going on the most liberal media in the nation. So I don't think that kind of decision should be made on that kind of basis. I think that we should be able to communicate the science.
Politically, Hanson calls himself an independent, and he's had trouble with both parties. He says from time to time the Clinton administration wanted to hear that warming was worse than it was, but Hanson refused to spin the science that way.
Should we be simply doing our science and reporting it rigorously, or to what degree the administration in power has the right to assume that you should be a spokesman for the administration? I've tried to be a straight scientist doing the science and reporting it as best I can.
Dozens of federal agencies report science, and much of it is edited at the White House before it's sent to Congress and the public. It appears that climate science is edited with a heavy hand. These drafts of climate reports were co-written by Rick Piltz for the Federal Climate Change Science Program. But Piltz says his work was edited by the White House to make global warming seem less threatening.
The strategy of people with a political agenda to avoid this issue is to say, there is so much to study way upstream here that we can't even begin to discuss impacts and response strategies. There's much too much uncertainty. And it's not climate scientists who are saying that. It's lawyers. It's politicians.
Piltz worked under the Clinton and Bush administrations, and each year he helped write a report to Congress called Our Changing Planet.
You're responsible for editing Our Changing Planet, and you send a review draft to the White House. What happens?
It comes back with a large number of edits, handwritten on the hard copy by the Chief of Staff of the Council on Environmental Quality.
And the Chief of Staff is whom?
Phil Cooney.
He is a scientist?
No, he's a lawyer. It was a lobbyist for the American Petroleum